Angry Birds is without a doubt one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time, not only in video games, but in other types of media too, such as cartoons, movies, and even toys. Angry Birds may seem like a dominant force in the industry, but it really does have an interesting development and origin story, from transforming a dying Rovio into a powerful force in the video game industry. However, like in my last video, the development and origin story of Angry Birds hasn't really been talked about in depth on YouTube. So, in episode 2 of From Concept to Release, we're going to see how Angry Birds not only saved Rovio, but managed to become one of the most recognisable video game franchises of all time. So today, prepare your slingshots, as I'm going to cover Angry Birds, from concept to release. The story of Angry Birds begins around November 2003. A new game studio from Finland was just formed known as Relude Oy, by three Helsinki University of Technology students, Nicholas Head, Jarno Vakavine, and Kim Dickerit. Previously, all three had competed in a mobile game development competition at the Assembly Demo Party, which was sponsored by Nokia and Hewlett-Packard. The three students developed a game known as King of the Cabbage World, which actually won the competition, with the victory leading them to create the studio. The game though was sold to Somia, and renamed Mole War, which actually became one of the first real-time multiplayer games for mobile. Throughout the studio's early years, they developed and co-developed multiple games, mostly for mobile, even having partnerships with EA and Namco on certain games, although the studio let other companies publish most of their games. Eventually, the company in 2005 changed its name to Rovio Mobile, as the studio mostly developed mobile games. Rovio's games were successful and even won some rewards, but with success comes a cost, and throughout the early years, Rovio began to struggle financially, even leading Rovio close to bankruptcy in 2009. And at that point, Rovio only had enough money left to develop one game, which could pretty much be Rovio's last chance at developing a successful game. Mikael Head, who recently became the chief executive of Rovio, and his cousin Nicholas Head, a founding member of the company, made the decision to completely reboot the studio. The company's future looked very uncertain at this point, only having around 12 employees compared to a peak of 50 employees after many forced layoffs in order to save money. Rovio's games mostly at this point were developed for larger studios such as EA, Namco, and Real Networks, with Rovio having only developed around 50 games at this point. Rovio itself wanted to develop multiple games by themselves. However, they only had enough resources to make one, and as I said before, the future of the company seemed very uncertain, with their fate either being bankruptcy or being acquired by a bigger studio, meaning that if Rovio never took a risk and had to go at developing one last game, Angry Birds would have never existed. Changes needed to be made. They decided to take the risk and shift Rovio's main focus from developing games for large publishers and develop one last game by themselves for the App Store out of Nokia's line of phones too, for their 50-second title. They needed to make a game which would apply to everyone and would stand out in the App Store. Nicholas and Mikael held a meeting to discuss new ideas, and this is where Jacko Lyslo comes in, most notably known for being the creator of Angry Birds. Jacko had previously been at Rovio as a game designer since 2005. He showed the two higher-ups a screenshot he attempted to pitch 2 months before, which showed a cartoony flock of birds without the ability to fly trudging along the ground towards a moving pile of colourful blocks. The original concept was called Depressed Birds, with some early designs of the flock. You can clearly see the early designs of red and the blues. The background was also similar to the final game's background. The pigs were also not in the game at this point. From the look of this concept, it originally intended you to tap on the screen, which made the birds jump at the coloured blocks. This concept art you're looking at right now was the pitch Jacko showed to the higher-ups at Rovio back in early 2009. The two instantly saw so much potential in Jacko's concept, they decided to utilise it for their next game. Rovio now had a plan, however, the company still needed saving. The initial budget for the game was around $25,000, and considering this game could decide Rovio's future, it had to be successful. They were so desperate for funds, one of the founders' uncles, presumably Nikel's, took a second mortgage out on their parents' house to help fund the game. The game had to be successful. At this point, presumably around early May 2009, the development of the game began. Nicholas and Mikkel led the development of the game, with Jacko being the lead designer. Other notable developers would be Peter Vesterbacker. The game's development went into full swing, and designs for the birds were starting to be finalised. Throughout development, the birds underwent many different designs and mechanics changes. This early prototype screenshot from Jacko's original pitch shows the original design for Red, originally being called George at this point, although not having an original name upon release, as well as RPG-styled stats for each bird, although this was scrapped early on. Rovio also at this point were looking for a main gameplay style to utilise in the game. Rovio eventually saw a popular flash game known as Crush the Castle, which required knocking down buildings with a catapult to complete levels. Although you could say Rovio somewhat stole Crush the Castle's main gameplay style, they massively changed it and somewhat improved it, replacing the catapult with a slingshot for example, even though the catapult was actually originally going to be implemented instead of a slingshot. The developers saw this potential gameplay mechanic to have lots of potential, and instantly implemented it into the game. The physics environment for the game was Box 2D. This physics engine was used in most Slingshot Angry Birds games up to Angry Birds 2, and with that game, they switched the engine to Unity. Coming back to the designs, the developers quickly noticed that having different coloured birds getting slingshotted into buildings was initially quite boring, and wouldn't have very high engagement levels with players. The whole depressed bird's name was also not very marketable, so the developers soon started looking for a new potential name. And the developers soon realised that to answer all their problems was just to find a main goal or story for the game. Jacko started designing an enemy for the game, and soon settled on green pigs as the main enemy, because of how they were easy to draw, and how the swine flu epidemic somewhat involved pigs around 2009. So this also influenced the decision, as it would technically get more attention from people because of how pigs were in the media at that point in time. After the enemies were now ready, the story of the game was being prepared, being that the pigs one day came with a plot to steal the birds' eggs as they wanted to eat them, which led the birds to follow the pigs to try and retrieve their eggs by knocking down all of their bases, hence each level. Because of how the pigs stole the birds' eggs, this also led the birds becoming angry instead of depressed, leading to the name becoming Angry Birds. The developers soon began designing the iconic levels, with different materials such as wood, glass and stone being used to construct the pigs' fortresses. The different materials encouraged the developers to add unique abilities to each bird, with the Blues being able to split into three and break through glass easily, Chuck being able to break through wood fast, and Bomb and Matilda being able to blast through stone, which can be seen in the final game. Also, upon release, many of you probably know that the birds didn't actually have names at this point, with many people referring to them as Red Bird or Blue Bird, although they got their names sometime after release in a future update. It seems throughout development, the birds as well as the pigs went through many design changes, although it seems the in-game designs were finalised quicker than the main designs. Small collectible eggs which led players to bonus levels known as the golden eggs were added as something for the players to collect whilst completing levels. If there's one thing about the development of Angry Birds which I absolutely can't miss, is the iconic soundtrack, with the unmistakable theme song. It was composed by Ari Pulkin, and compared to the theme song used in the final game, the actual song itself had a small part at the beginning cut from the final theme. Although there's not much information regarding Angry Birds' development in depth, we can see that the game was created around 2005 or 2006, with development of the game lasting around 8 months, beginning around early 2009. Around December 2009, after 8 months of development and many changes, the game was around ready for release. Rovio knew the potential of the game had to be a hit, as if it flopped, Rovio's fate would almost certainly be bankruptcy. Angry Birds had to succeed. On December 1st, 2009, Rovio's YouTube channel, or the Angry Birds YouTube channel as it's known today, released the first trailer for the game, showing off some gameplay which is pretty much the final game, with a few minor differences. As far as we know, the trailer performed pretty average, however, did build some hype for the game within Rovio's fanbase. In terms of publishing, Angry Birds was published by EA Shilingo, EA's mobile game division, as Rovio at this point mainly got other developers to publish their games. The game, excluding future updates, exceeded its $25,000 budget, costing around €100,000 to develop, around £88,000 or just under $120,000. When December 11th came around, Angry Birds was officially released onto the App Store and for Nokia devices for around $1, with Rovio's future being even more uncertain at this point due to the amount of money the game costed to make. And did the game perform well? Well, not exactly. In fact, the game at first completely flopped. Yes, you heard me right. Angry Birds at launch didn't perform very well, getting little downloads, around 30,000, and was returning nowhere near the amount of success it needed for Rovio to turn away from bankruptcy. At this point, most developers would just move on and develop a new game, but with Rovio, they still saw something unique about Angry Birds. In fact, Nicholas showed the game to his mother during Christmas, presumably after the game's launch, and she instantly became addicted to the game. And the funny thing is, she never played any games before, which showed him that Angry Birds still had major potential. The game was pretty much perfect, but Rovio weren't sure what they needed to do to get the game off the ground, as at this point, they weren't ready to just give up and accept defeat. Rovio noticed that the game in the Finland App Store only took a few hundred downloads to take it to number 1 in the top charts. So, Rovio saw that getting the game popular in small countries with less competitive app stores such as the UK and other European countries could gain Angry Birds some publicity throughout the world and hopefully increase sales. And this is what not only saved Angry Birds, but also saved Rovio from bankruptcy. At this point, Angry Birds' growth can be compared to the speed of light. Very, very fast. The game around February 2010 started to gain major popularity in the UK, propelling itself into the top charts. It also became a featured app on the store, which arguably made the game very popular. Angry Birds quickly became extremely popular in the UK, being played from kids to teenagers to even adults. From the success in the UK, Angry Birds started becoming very popular in other countries all around the world, even morphing into a pop cultural icon. The growth and popularity provided Angry Birds with millions of downloads, almost certainly saving Rovio from bankruptcy and turning them into a mobile game giant. The fact that Rovio a year before were desperately trying to escape bankruptcy, clever business and marketing techniques managed to transform the small studio into a mobile game giant, with the help of a flock of birds and mischievous pigs. Angry Birds after launch received many rewards and many positive reviews from critics. Rewards consist of being named one of the best mobile games of all time by IGN in 2010, as well as winning both the Game App and App of the Year at the UK Appy Awards in 2011, and at the 2011 Webby Awards won the Best Game for Handheld Devices. In 2012, the game even managed to surpass 1 billion downloads, which a year before, which would have been an impossible goal for Rovio to achieve. Soon after launch, Rovio developed a free version of Angry Birds called Angry Birds Lite in 2010 to attract more players, later being discontinued and replaced with Angry Birds Free in 2012. Angry Birds Free was then discontinued in 2016, and the full version became known as Angry Birds Classic, becoming free to play and with ads being introduced. The main game and free version both received HD versions for iOS with better quality graphics. With the success of Angry Birds, Rovio didn't hesitate to port it to different platforms. Major ports consist of Android, Flash, Windows, macOS, Windows Phone, the Amazon App Store, and to consoles with Angry Birds Trilogy. Angry Birds also made its way to the arcade, and also made its way into smaller platforms too, such as Nokia's Symbian OS and HP's WebOS. Special promotional versions of the game created mainly during partnerships Rovio had with other companies were made too, such as Angry Birds Chrome, McDonald's, Cheetos, Coca-Cola, Haiki, Volcano, and many more, some of which are really strange, but unique in their own way. In years after launch, the game received many updates, from new characters, levels, to mixed received power-ups, and even being controversially pulled from more stores in 2019, which I've talked about in 2 other videos on my channel. The game even got a sequel known as Angry Birds 2 in 2015. A Facebook version of the original Angry Birds was also planned, although was later transformed into Angry Birds Friends, which later released in 2012. But besides that, Angry Birds quickly became one of the most recognizable video game franchises in the world, with over 20 games being released, from 2 Star Wars themed games, to a Rio themed game, to Angry Birds Go, as well as seasons, with spin-offs and many more. The franchise even spread to merchandise, theme parks, stores, TV shows, 2 movies, sponsorships. Oh, believe me, I can go on. I'd still love to go to an Angry Birds theme park someday. So, there we have it. From concept to release, we've covered Angry Birds' origins, its development, and how it managed to save Rovio from bankruptcy. The story of this iconic game and franchise just goes to show that if you have an idea that doesn't get attention and doesn't receive the success you wanted to receive, changing your strategy slightly could completely help it explode in popularity. And although Angry Birds' reputation these days has hit an all-time low, with a split fanbase and uncertain future, as seen in its origins, a few changes can completely turn things around, and I hope Angry Birds sticks around for many years to come. Anyway, that's about it from this episode of From Concept to Release. If you enjoyed it and want to see more content like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, as it really does help massively. Clicking the little bell icon and enabling notifications can really help me a lot too, as well as sharing the video online with many people you know. Make sure to check out my Twitter and Instagram, also make sure to check out my Discord server too, links to all are in the description. What are your favourite memories of Angry Birds Classic, or what should I cover for episode 3? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.